Yes, we are live on Rainier Avenue Radio World. Welcome back from break. This is our special broadcast of the impact of the coronavirus on South Seattle and surrounding communities. Earlier in the program, we talked with John Taylor from King County, and once again, want to make sure that we encourage if you live in unincorporated King County, like Skyway or White Center or Falls City or Fairfield, there is a grant available for you up to $5,000. And if you haven't received any assistance, if you haven't been part of the PPP or any of the granting that's been available, this is for you. And the number to call if you need assistance, I did get that, is 206 331 3275. Now, if you need help filling out this grant, call this number 206 331 3275. They will answer your questions. If you need a translator, they'll provide you with the translator. And my understanding is if they'll help you fill out the grant while you're on the phone. If you can't do this via the internet, there are also a few locations that are available. I think it's White Center Community Center, Patrick's Coffee House, and the Skyway Fire District, where you can pick up physical applications and fill those out. And if you have it postmarked by today, then you will meet that midnight deadline. But wait, there's more. John announced on the program today that if there are still barriers in place and you're just finding out about this and you're wondering how can you scramble to do this, submit this by 5 or 6 whenever the post office closes, or do this over the internet by midnight and that's not working out for you. He's going to give you to close of business on Monday. As director, he made a executive decision. So you still have until 5 o'clock on Monday. If you missed that particular show, it should be available shortly on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, so you can get that information and apply for this grant. This is for you. If you have less than 15 employees, this grant is for you. If you make less than $1.5 million, this grant is for you. You don't even have to have a physical building. As long as the address for your business is in unincorporated King County, this grant is for you. It could be used for rent. It could be used for utilities. It could be used because you've lost money during this. And Calli, I know I'm cutting in your time here. I just want to make sure that folks are aware of this opportunity. 206 331 3275. So now, welcome to the program with me, Calli Knight. Calli, you're there, right?
Hey, Tony, can you hear me?
Yes. A little bit about your background. You are the Deputy Director of External Relations, and an interesting background. Started your political career as an intern with Planned Parenthood. Spent 6 years campaign and legislative experience, and then also you grew up in a musical family, and you play upright and electric bass for 8 years. In
I
it,
did, yes.
and you were a college radio DJ,
That's correct, Tony.
and you were a former preschool teacher.
That is also correct for a number of years. And I
Yes.
always tell all of my friends I work with in politics that that was the best education and training I could have gotten for working in the political arena.
Well, I tell you, as a preschool teacher, I'm sure that you are aware of the importance of, I'm going to use a wonky term here. I'll just call it high quality early education, uh,
Absolutely.
and the importance that that has on the future of making sure that our youth get the best start early. And 85% of the brain development is done by the time a child is 3 years old. And there are some very simple things that you can do as a parent. This isn't rocket science to prepare your child for school and make those synapses connect in the brain. And I know I'm preaching to the choir if I'm talking to a preschool teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate your wonky knowledge about early childhood.
Okay, so back to what we're going to be talking about here today as the Deputy Director of External Relations. We'll start with the mask mandate. Can you start with that and tell us what the state rule, King County rule is regarding masks?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for that question, Tony. Early on in COVID, King County issued a mask directive, which was not, it didn't go as far as the governor's mandate, but it strongly urged King County residents to wear face coverings when they were in settings where they couldn't observe social distancing. So like farmers markets, grocery stores, things like that. And then the governor, when the State Department of Health was seeing cases start to surge over the last few weeks, issued a mandate requiring all Washington residents to wear face coverings when they were in similar situations, going into businesses, restaurants, any of the other activities that go along with these different new phases of reopening under his Safe Start plan. So King County is under phase 2. The governor's mask mandate supersedes our directive. And so one of the things, and we actually made this purchase before the governor's mandate was issued, but one of the things we thought we could do as a local government to be helpful in supporting like mask use and social distancing was to actually purchase a large order of these supplies to help get out to our communities, so that we're not just saying you must wear a mask but then not offering solutions on where to access the different supplies. And so one project that I've been helping to oversee is how we're distributing those 25 million cloth and disposable masks that we purchased in early June.
25 million. All right. Well, that segues really well into that next question. What are these 25 million masks for? Who is eligible to get them? If you're a business, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but if you're a business, if you're a resource provider, a service provider, how can you get your hands on these masks?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Tony. Thank you. So just to break down the numbers, and then I'll go into like how people can access the supplies. We purchased 5 million cloth masks and 20 million disposables. So that's kind of how that breaks down. If you are a small business or a chamber of commerce in King County, you can go to a website called www.safestartkingcounty.com, and you can either sign up to pick up a Safe Start kit that includes cloth masks, disposable masks, and some hand sanitizers at one of the in-person pickup events, which is sort of like a drive-through model that a coalition of chambers in the county are partnering with Amazon treasure trucks to provide. So for example, tomorrow in Soto, they're going to have a distribution event, and all you have to do is visit that website and sign up. They're also going to have events on Vashon Island and another one in Seattle in the coming weeks as well. If you can't make it through a drive-through event, you can also sign up to get it shipped to you through that website if you're a small business owner or a chamber. So I urge anyone who is a small business owner in King County or a chamber of commerce, whether you're just geographically based or an ethnic chamber of commerce, whatever, go visit that website and make sure you get access to these supplies. And I want to shout out the Seattle Southside Chamber, the Bellevue Chamber, One Redmond, and the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber for taking the lead on helping us implement that program. As far as eligibility goes, Tony, the only requirement is that you are a resident of King County. So you have to have an address within the King County limits. We have 39 cities, a 250,000 people who live in our unincorporated areas. As long as you are a King County resident, you are eligible to get access to these supplies. So we've taken a few other strategies to make sure we're getting the masks out into the communities. So to date, we've supplied masks to all of our 39 cities. We've done 2 rounds of distribution for our cities. For example, next week, the city of Burien is going to be hosting at least 2 events, pop-up events to get masks out to Burien residents. for example, some of our smaller cities like Clyde Hill, they are using census data to mail masks to all of the residential addresses in their city. And so I would encourage everybody to go to your city's like Facebook or Twitter page and see if they're going to host pop-ups. We are also going to be hosting a pop-up event in Federal Way at the Aquatic Center next Tuesday from 1 to 5 p.m. with the Treasure Trek team at Amazon. And people, you don't have to be a Federal Way resident. You can just live in King County. People can drive through, and we'll be passing out reusable cloth face masks at that pop-up event as well. And so one thing that we've done is put together this website. It's just kingcounty.gov/mask distribution, where we're posting all of the pop-up events that we know about. And then we're also posting for example, if you're a childcare provider, there's a number that you call, and that's how you get your masks. If you are a small business, we direct you to that one website that I mentioned earlier. And then for community organizations and churches, we've actually partnered with about 650 individual CBOs and churches to get masks and sanitizers out to communities that are most impacted by COVID. And so there's a really long list of like senior centers, farmers markets, POC-led organizations, churches all around the county that also have supplies to give out to the community.
Now, I'm not gonna, unless you have it on the top of your tongue, top of your head. The place is in South Seattle. If you do, you can name a few. If not, we'll get that from you and we'll share that, just because we've got so.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So off the top of my head, I can think we'll be getting supplies to the Rainier Beach Action Coalition, the Rainier Beach Merchants Association, Wablock will be getting some masks from us. Those are just a few off the top of my head that I know we're going to be distributing some masks and sanitizers to over the next couple of weeks.
All right, and I'm going to put a plug in for what's the name of Ty and Karen? What's the name of Ty and Yvette's business? Just opened up, and they've been providing food, and they're kind of under the radar, but they should get some masks too, because they see people, and it's in what they call Old Rainier Beach. Karen? Oh, I don't think she can hear me. Anyway.
Well, Tony, if you want to pass along their information to me, you have my email address, and we can see if we can get them.
Okay.
Some
Yeah.
supplies.
Gathering space.
What's it called? The Gathering Place. Yeah, the Gathering Place, and they just do a phenomenal job of sharing. It's 9254 57th Avenue South, and they have a free food Thursday, and then Saturdays from noon to 2. They're giving away a number of other things, and then on Monday, so that's at 9254 57th Avenue South. Lots of folks show up to the Gathering Space to have their needs taken care of. So maybe, Calli, we can see if we can get them some masks as well.
Yeah, let's do it. And I thought of just one other one off the top of my head. The central area senior center is also going to be getting some supplies, which is great.
Okay. So there is more to talk about, and time is flying. But this whole conversation, as I mentioned to you before, about masks.
Yeah.
And are we going to start calling them face coverings, or is that a different thing than a mask? Or if you say mask and face covering, are we talking about the same thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you. I use those terms interchangeably, but I think face covering is probably the best label because people can wear like bandanas or just put their shirts. Like I was at the grocery store earlier and I saw like a teenager who just had his shirt over his nose. And we have at the county, our public health communications team put together some posters when we first did our directive, and you may have seen them hung up at like businesses around the community that show all the different kinds of face coverings, aside from just like the traditional mask that has the little loops that you put over your ears. Mm-hmm. So I think I use it interchangeably, but face coverings is probably the most appropriate term to catch all of those different kinds that you can use.
Okay, so the distinction is it does not have to be something that covers your mouth and nose and wraps around your ears. It can be a cloth covering over your face, putting your shirt up over your nose and mouth, that would be considered a face covering.
Yeah, I mean the shirt over your mouth, everything. So it has to cover your nose and mouth because that's how the droplets get out, right? The t-shirt over your face is not an ideal approach, but I think is a last minute resort kind of thing for people who may have walked into a store and been like, oh, darn it, I forgot my face covering in the car, or I forgot it at home, or it's in the wash right now. We are really encouraging people to get a dedicated face covering. And the ones that we procured and are going to be getting out to the community, they are the mask type that have the loops that go over your ears. And for the cloth ones, they're just these 100% cotton Hanes brand white cotton masks with the loops. And then the disposables are like the one-time use ones that you would find at like a doctor's office, for example.
Now, I was talking with Northwest Grocery, someone from the Northwest Grocery Association, and we were sharing this information because obviously folks have to wear masks in the stores. This is adding an additional burden to those stores as they have to become mask police. And this requires special training. So my question to you as we get further into this is, explain to us what happens if you're a big business or a small business and you choose to ignore or you don't pay close attention to the directive, the mandate for a mask. And if you are an individual and you choose not to wear a mask, what are the penalties involved here?
Yeah, Tony, those are great questions. Because it's an order from the governor, I actually don't know what all the details are in terms of fines and enforcement because it's managed at the state level. It's something that I'd be happy to look into and get back to you about, though. When it was I can speak to King County's directive, even though the governor's mandate supersedes it. We were not, because it was just strongly urging people, there was no enforcement or fines attached to it. I would need to look into whether or not there's some kind of like criminal or civil fine or penalty that goes under the governor's, but I don't have any more information than that. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, my understanding is that there's a business can be fined $10,000 if they ignore this mandate.
That's serious.
Yeah. And so I don't know what the fine is for an individual, but we've had confrontations where folks have not wanted to wear a mask. Now, the other thing about this, Calli, in King County, are there medical reasons that are okay in King County for someone to not wear a mask or face covering?
Yeah, so we instruct people to go on the recommendation and advice of their physician if there is some needed exception. So we know that some folks with disabilities, for example, don't have the ready ability to take a mask or a face covering on or off. And I think that's a really important caveat that we want to highlight. And we've been working with groups like the Alliance for People with Disabilities to really try to raise awareness about that. I'm sure there are some other maybe respiratory conditions that would, make it dangerous for somebody to be wearing a face covering. But by and large, those exceptions we think are kind of few and far between. But by and large, people who are healthy and able to wear a face covering should absolutely do so under the governor's order.
And this may seem like a fundamental question, but let's answer it. Why are you requiring folks to wear masks or face coverings?
Yeah. So again, that's King County did not issue that requirement. I would say probably need to talk to the governor's office to get a straight sort of fundamental answer on that. But I think what I can say from the county's perspective is that the more, this is a novel virus, the more that we are learning about, at the beginning of this, even Dr. Fauci was like, we don't think masks are really going to help. The more we're collecting data and understanding the science about how transmission of this virus works, it's become clear that face coverings and masks can do a lot of good in stemming the spread of the virus.
Okay. Now I told you I wanted to spend some time on masks because of this, because of the mandate, and in King County that supersedes everything else that you've done. So again, I know that there's a $10,000 fine for businesses, but um, what constitutes this? May be again a different. You talked about what constitutes a mask or a face covering if it's see-through? Is that still a face covering or a mask? Does it have to be a certain density, or just? And I know that's going to be hard to find, but
Yeah, that's a good question, Tony. I would direct anybody who's looking for the nitty gritty on what constitutes a face covering. The CDC and our kingcounty.gov/COVID website has really good information about. So, like, for example, we see like face shields, like those see-through face shields, that actually under the governor's order, I understand does not constitute a face covering
oh,
because it leaves space in between your mouth and your nose
mhm.
and the world around you, for example. And so I would really urge folks to look toward the public health guidance of their local health authority. So if you're in King County, kingcounty.gov/COVID, that's got all the information. And then the CDC guidelines are pretty comprehensive as well.
Okay, I'm going to move away from that masks
Yeah.
here and face coverings just because we've got a few time. But thank you for sharing that information on that.
Yeah.
If folks want to get tested, are there sites available? We've heard different things about anybody can get a test anytime, or then there are a few different locations. Can you update us on King County on testing?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for asking that question, because it's like so important that people know where they can go to get tested. So if you are somebody who has access to health insurance and a traditional healthcare provider, you can get your COVID test through your regular hospital or doctor that you go to. So if you, for example, have Kaiser and you go to the Capitol Hill Kaiser location, you can drive through and utilize your existing health coverage to get a COVID test. But we know that not everybody has access to health insurance, particularly because it's tied to your employment. And so many people have lost their jobs due to this pandemic, right? So a lot of our community health clinics like CMAR, Neighbor Care, ICHS, those like really important community health clinics, and other, we have one a downtown public health clinic that's acting as a testing site as well, are standing up COVID tests all across the county for people who don't have health insurance, who are undocumented, who don't have access to testing through traditional healthcare coverage. So there are several sites available for individuals who don't have that access to traditional healthcare service testing. There are 2 sites operated by the city of Seattle, one at North Aurora, one in Soto. Those are both, I think, drive-through testing, and they have interpretation available for folks who might not speak English as their first language. Health Point is a community health clinic operator that has drive-through sites in Kent, in Renton, and in Auburn, and have interpretation available for several languages. Neighbor Care has a North Seattle location on Meridian Ave. There's a Rainier Beach location, High Point in West Seattle, and on Vashon Island, so getting out into the unincorporated areas. Like I said, our downtown public health clinic in Belltown is available for testing, and you can walk in, and we have interpretation available there. CMAR has several locations, and sorry, I'm going to keep going for a little bit, but I think this is really important. CMAR has sites in South Park, in Bellevue, White Center, Kent, and Federal Way. And then we have those UW mobile clinics. We know there's one right across the street from Rainier Beach High School. That's just a walk-up community testing site. There's one at South Seattle College, at the Kent Public Health location, at Auburn at their City Adventist Church. And then there's another one in Vashon, one in Duval, and then the SCAN network, the Seattle Coronavirus Assessment Network. People can go online to sign up to participate in that study and get testing actually delivered to them at home.
All right, that's great information, and a lot of information. I wish we had more time. By doing this testing, you mentioned on folks who are undocumented or trying to become citizens, does this any way screw up public charge?
No, I don't believe so, because I don't believe these community health clinics collect any information about status, immigration and citizenship status.
Okay, because that's a big question for some folks as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The other thing, while we got a couple minutes left here that I want to get to, so you get tested, you find out you're positive, you live in a multi-generational home,
Right.
you can't really quarantine. How is King County impacting and affecting the possibility that there are folks out there who just actually don't have the means to quarantine?
Yeah, certainly. Tony, thanks. That's a really important question, and actually one of the key strategies that we as a public health agency can employ, and very quickly did employ once we found out that folks were dying in the Life Care Center out in Kirkland due to COVID. So this is something that we do for infectious disease outbreaks. Like, for example, if there's like a measles outbreak or a TB outbreak or something, our public health department always has isolation and quarantine beds available to populations who need to isolate and quarantine. But because of COVID and the mass transmission of COVID, we needed to set up really standalone locations where people could go safely isolate and quarantine. And those are for people who, they've either tested positive or they're experiencing symptoms waiting to get their test results back and can't safely wait at home because, they don't have a home. They have somebody in their family who's immunocompromised. Maybe they're traveling to King County, but experienced some symptoms in the last couple of days and don't have a safe place to go. So we set up, we currently have 2 isolation and quarantine sites that are in operation. One of them is in Issaquah, and one of them is at North Aurora in the city of Seattle. We have sites that are not operational right now in Kent, in White Center, and we did operate an assessment and recovery center for a little while up in Shoreline, but our transmission was so low that we actually didn't have to operate that location anymore, which is great. So anybody who is experiencing symptoms, who thinks they might not be able to safely isolate and quarantine at home for whatever reason, you can call our public health hotline at 206-477-3977 and get referred to one of these safe places so that you can recover or, safely isolate and wait out your symptoms so that you're not getting other people in your family or in your household sick. So I really urge anybody to call that number. And I can just give an example, Tony, of a time a few weeks ago where we saw a big surge event happen.
I'm gonna cut you off here because we're almost out of time. But really quickly, can you tell us if there are any communities that are coronavirus hotspots?
Yeah. So I wanted to share this resource. Thanks for reminding me, Tony. So on our kingcounty.gov/COVID page, we have a daily, we have a bunch of data dashboards for a bunch of different long-term care facilities, homelessness and COVID, but there's a daily dashboard that shows the rate of transmission in all of our cities and unincorporated areas. And you can see where the hot spots are. So I really encourage anybody who's interested to visit that website. For example, we saw transmission spike in the White Center community over the last several weeks. And so one of the things that we've been doing with a partnership with our Department of Local Services is actually going out to businesses, getting supplies out to our White Center community members to make sure that folks have access to face coverings and sanitizers to help stem the transmission. So again, that dashboard can be accessed at kingcounty.gov/COVID, and there's a little button that says data dashboards. Go to the first one, which is the daily data dashboard.
Hey, Calli, you've been great at giving out information. We didn't have enough time to really go over things. Really quickly, though, about 30 seconds, just because we're actually over time right now. I want to give you the opportunity for final words, just in case there's something that we missed that you want to make sure you get out to the general public.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who's listening for staying safe and staying healthy, and helping us by using face coverings, washing your hands, limiting contact, staying home when you can. It's going to take all of us to slow down the spread and get rid of COVID. And we just want to thank everybody for their due diligence. And Tony, want to thank you for inviting me and for your time today.
And thank you, Callie. That's it. That's all the time that we have. That's going to do it for the kid. We'll be back next Friday with another coronavirus show. It's Tony B saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.